only mode.
Good morning, everybody. Welcome to our 2015 Media Trends and Online Newsroom Report. Thank you so much for being with us today. Could you just do me a favor, and if you can see the screen and you can hear me, just put it in the chat box, please. Just put a yes so I can see that you can hear me. Excellent. Thank you very much. We have a working webinar. That's fine. Thank you. Jim, I assume you can hear me if you can't find the chat box, but that's fine. Thank you, everybody. And I'd like to introduce you to our guest today, Wendy Marks. Wendy, say hello.
Hi, everybody, and thanks, Sal, for inviting me, Sal.
Wendy, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Did you not hear me? Can you hear me now?
1 second. I had her a minute ago. We were happily talking to one another. Let me just see if I can get her back.
You know what? I need to, just 1 second.
And Rebecca said, Rebecca, can you hear me?
Yes,
Okay,
I can hear you, but I'm getting an echo.
I don't understand why that's not working now. They were working.
Sal, can you hear me? It's Wendy.
Rebecca?
Yes, I'm here.
Can you hear me, Rebecca?
Yes, I can hear you, but I'm getting a major echo.
Wendy, are you there?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me? Yes, I'm getting an echo also. Could it be that I'm connected via the phone? Should I try doing it
we are getting feedback. So you need to use earphones if you're doing it through your computer. Or otherwise mute your speakers and your... Can you mute your speakers? Yeah, that's better, much better, thank you.
Okay, it was because I was on a phone, yeah.
Okay. And Rebecca, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Yay, it's all working.
Okay, got it. So I had actually tried to call in through a phone, but I wasn't aware I didn't need to do that.
Okay. So everybody's here now? This is fantastic. So let me introduce you to our guest for today. We'll try that again. Wendy Marks, say hi to everybody.
Hi, everyone. So nice to be on the webinar with Rebecca and Sal, and very much looking forward to it.
Great. And let me also introduce you to Rebecca Eiliff from Air PR. Rebecca, say hi to our guests.
Hello, good morning, and thanks for having me. Much like Wendy, I'm excited to be here, and hopefully will be helpful as well.
Okay, so let's just dive right in because we've wasted like 5 minutes. So you know who I am, and I'm the president of Pressfeed and also a senior fellow, research fellow with the Society for New Communication Research. And this research is done every year with SNCR. So you can find out more about SNCR at sncr.org, and you can follow me on Twitter at Sally Falco. And then we have Rebecca and Wendy. And Rebecca, your Twitter is Rebecca Eiliff, all one word, right? And also Wendy, yours is Wendy Marks, I believe. Am I correct?
That is right. Thanks.
Okay, so go ahead and tweet away if you would like to let others know what's happening on this webinar today. So what we looked at is some trends that have emerged over the last 12 months since we did the last round of looking at corporate newsrooms and what is going on in the media and how do these corporate newsrooms actually service the media and and fill the needs that's happening with the changing landscape. So one of them, and the most, I think, still biggest one, is that we have shrinking media newsrooms, which is creating a lack of resources to report the news. Wendy, do you have any comment about that trend? What have you seen?
That is definitely the case. And as I think you go on to say here, Sal, the fact that these newsrooms are shrinking, there's such a shortage of reporters, they're so overworked and understaffed that any way you can help them is appreciated, actually.
All right.
So that's definitely happening, and it seems to be shrinking more every day.
It certainly does. There just doesn't seem to be any end to the layoffs. We keep thinking, well, this year, surely we've seen the end of it, and then we see another huge big one again. So the second one is that search is now the most used and most trusted source for finding and validating news and business information. I mean, we all knew that everyone uses search, but this is from the Edelman Trust Barometer, and I'll show you the graphs in a minute. It's just really, for the first time, it showed up in that trust barometer that search is the most trusted source for finding and validating news. So if you had any idea that SEO was not really part of PR, now's the moment to change that idea. Rebecca, any comment on that trend?
Yeah, I think it's, in my opinion, it's one of those things that we just have to think holistically about content development. So everything from our pitches to content marketing to social, we have to have that eye to SEO, and it all really has to be, coordinated as such, because SEO is still one of the most powerful things in terms of being seen. And so I think it's just about, again, looking at it holistically and figuring out what those keywords are and how to put those into all of our content.
Right.
Sally, really quickly, sorry, but I'm actually not seeing any slides or anything, and I don't know why that is. But if you can maybe shoot me over the link, but yeah. I can also just wing it because I'm a good listener. So,
but you are logged on and you're not seeing my screen?
Correct, yeah.
Wendy, do you see the screen?
Yes, I do.
Okay, good.
Yeah, it's okay. I'll keep messing with it, but I just want to let you know. So I'm just kind of listening.
Okay. All right. So the third one was that there's been a really rising demand for visual content, and we're not seeing that in the newsrooms. So we'll go over how the newsrooms are scoring in that. And then there are two that we're going to look at in terms of looking to the future. And the one is that you have to start providing more content than just your press releases, because you need to also address content that your customers are going to be interested in terms of what kind of things are they looking for, what kind of information are they looking for around your product or service. So it's kind of like, if you look at Red Bull, look at all the stuff that they do in terms of extreme sports and the lifestyle of the people that are their core consumers. And then the last one is looking at data, analytics, measurement in order to figure out how we're doing and also to drive future content strategy. So just a little while ago, CISM put out a State of the Media 2015, and this was a quote from that report. The many business changes and reimagined content models that large media companies put forth in 2014 ultimately led to job losses as the newspaper publishing industry found themselves with reshuffled newsrooms and redefined roles that had shifted toward an emphasis on digital media. And one of the things that we've seen, apart from, as we said earlier, there just have been continued layoffs in many places, but the sad thing is that it's often the veterans that are being laid off. As you can see from some of these tweets that happened in September last year when USA Today did that big layoff. So this one was from Edna Gunderson. She'd been there for 30 years. Sharon Jason had been there for 10 years. And we've seen this happening in many of these media companies. It's not the young, inexperienced ones they're laying off. It's the older people who've been there for a long time, but they have a legacy of knowledge. Those people know their beat inside and out, upside and down. They have a Rolodex of sources and people that they could call at the drop of a hat for a comment. And that is disappearing out of the newsrooms. So this, again, as Wendy said earlier, is a really big opportunity for companies and PR people and with their newsrooms to supply this kind of content and make life easier for these journalists. Do you want to pick up that thread, Wendy, and just see if there's any more you wanted to comment about that? Wendy?
Yes, yeah, no, I'm here.
Okay.
Hopefully you can hear me. Yes, definitely it's important to look at this as an opportunity. Not only have these outlets laid off so many people, they're also looking for more content. So you not only have the opportunity to be helping individual journalists, you also in many cases have the opportunity to be contributing your own content to these publications because they don't have the staff necessarily to write it themselves.
Right.
Yeah, this is Rebecca, I was just going to jump on that. I think that there is a tremendous opportunity from a PR standpoint to understand the implications of those layoffs, which means now your clients, if they are experts in their field, can have a column and, can be contributing writers. And so I think that in a sense, it's actually has been great for PR because we're now kind of in the driver's seat in a certain sense.
Definitely so. All right, so how does this affect the corporate newsroom? What is it that the journalists are hoping to find that will help them? So as we've said, there's a lack of resources. We have inexperienced reporters covering multiple beats, and they just can't cover in-depth stories. They just don't have the resources to produce investigative journalism. There are certain beats that have kind of lost their reporters. Education in many places is not getting reported. They don't have a single reporter anymore. And health, which is a strange one because there's more and more demand for health news, and yet there's a shrinking supply of it in the newsrooms. So the corporate newsrooms, the things that they're telling us, the journalists are telling us that they really want, is still their number one complaint is there's no PR contact. When we come to first of all, it's hard to find the newsroom. We can't find the newsroom when we just do a search. When we arrive on the site, we have to dig around until we find this newsroom. The thing we're looking for is somebody we can contact. And then even when we find the newsroom, we can't find the PR contact. Maybe there's a PR contact on the main page, but then there isn't one on individual press releases. Now, bear in mind that those individual press releases are going to get found in search. They're not always going to run into your main newsroom page. So you have to have your PR contacts in both places. There is a big opportunity with expert sources, as Rebecca was just saying. You could be offering story ideas because they probably don't have the time to really dig into everything that you do. But if you could offer them editorial ideas right there in your newsroom, that would be something that would be helpful. And then you should be curating industry news and trends because it's possible that that is not being done, or it's going to take a reporter a long time to find that, whereas if they come to your newsroom and all the content they need is right there, it's very likely that they're going to call you if there's a PR contact on the page and they know who to call. Rebecca, any comments on those?
Yeah, I was going to give an example. I and I don't know if Pressfeed is powering them, but I think Genentech has a really great, I was doing some research on the Fortune 100s, and if you look at a site like Genentech, and it literally says for media, and that's how you get there. And then you look at something like there are other companies who, like you were saying, it's just really hard to find the information, and when you go, all it is a listing of press releases, which is not really useful because you want to get the media to a point where you're kind of churning their juices and ideas for them, and then the opportunity to reach out. I think the other thing to add here is that, and maybe this goes into curating industry news and trends, but I think always having a link to the company blog within the context of the newsroom
Right.
is really important. Then the media can see, oh, they've already been talking about these things, and they are kind of established resources. So I think that's just one more additional thing to kind of add.
Cool. So here's one. Excuse me. This is an agency, Fingerpaint, and you can see they have a lot of different press contacts here, all available. And then when you go to their individual sections and you click on these individual releases, you will find the relevant person out of this list for that subject. So they're doing a really good job on that. So when we looked at all these newsrooms, we've looked at 300 newsrooms. The Fortune 100 are doing a pretty good job. They're just under 80%. The Fortune 500, it drops down to 67%. But it's the Inc. 500 throughout all of these, and we see this every single year. The Inc. 500, which are the fastest growing companies in America, privately owned companies, but they're fast growing companies. They are not doing a really good job with their newsrooms. And they, look at this, less than 30% of them have PR contacts in their newsroom. Any comment, Wendy? You write for Fast Company. What do you think about that?
No, I fully agree that it's interesting that I find in particular the small to mid-sized companies are very bad in terms of even having a newsroom, let alone having any contacts. They frequently will put press releases up with no contacts in the press release. There's no really good content. You don't know who their experts are, who you could quickly call. So I would fully support those statistics that you found.
Right. Rebecca, you write for Inc. Has this subject ever come up? Do you know?
I was going to say, well, gosh, I don't even want to admit it now. No, it hasn't. I also wonder if, as a fast-growing company, at times, you don't even really want people contacting you, and I'm wondering if that may have something to do with it too, because you're kind of in that mode where you don't oftentimes want to be that easily accessible. So, but honestly, I think that it's one of those things where it's like people are just not thinking all the way through the process. They're just not closing the loop, and so they think, oh, if I have a press release listed and there's a contact on there, that's enough. Instead of really looking at it from a user experience standpoint, they're looking at it merely from a content standpoint.
Right.
Instead of what's the experience of the media as a user, for example, to use a technology term, when they come to the site. And I think, honestly, it's a lack of detail and really thinking through the entire process.
Right.
I was just going to add, and I agree with what Rebecca just said, just to add to that, typically in our experience, the Inc. 500 don't have anybody in the company that truly understands PR. And as a result, they're just winging it, and they're winging it poorly.
Right.
Yeah.
So again, when you look at who's offering story ideas, the Fortune 100 is doing the best, but all of them are actually under 35% of all these companies are even offering story ideas to the media. So that's a big area where people could do an improvement to their newsrooms. As you were saying, Rebecca, you should, start making their juices turn. If they're so overworked, it's going to really help if you can spark ideas for them. And in terms of curating industry news and trends, it's even worse. Fortune 100, only 26%, Fortune 500, 11%, and our little Inc. 500, not even 5% of them are doing it. So you're right, Wendy, I guess they're just not doing this. But to me, I can see that some of them are maybe don't have enough staff, or they don't have somebody on board. And yet those that have newsrooms, and it's a big percentage, about 90% of the Inc. 500 have a newsroom. So they are putting out press releases. They're just not doing a good job of it.
Mm-hmm.
And the experts, this has been something that we hear from the media more and more interest in over the last 18 months, because they need people to talk to. They've got to have people to quote and comment on their stories. That's part of what they do when they're reporting the news. So there's a huge opportunity to showcase your experts. Every company has experts. We tend to think, oh, well, I'm just a small company. I don't really have experts. I'm not a research institute. I'm not a university. I'm not a hospital. But every company does have somebody within that company that knows things that that brand does that nobody else knows. So you have to think about it from a slightly different viewpoint. What do you think, Rebecca?
Yeah, I was actually just on, so we're part of the Inc. 5000 Air PR, so it's not quite the 500, but I'm actually on our newsroom, and I was just like listening to you, and I'm thinking, you know, I think as smaller companies, a lot of times, as Wendy said, you're literally just trying to kind of like get through the growth, and I think it's like not thinking in that way more than it is something that's purposeful. I don't even think it's on people's radar a lot of times. And I also think that what's so useful with webinars like this and educating people is that it's changing so quickly what is required of communications experts and PR people.
Right.
So it's almost like, it's changed the way that media wants to be communicated with, what their needs are, what they're asking for. So I think it's just a commitment to continuing to listen and kind of be open to education,
right,
in this way.
Which is one of the reasons why we do this every year, because we have the opportunity to talk to the media on an ongoing basis through the year and find out how things are changing and what they need. Because I think that's, as you say, every PR person in every small company is not going to have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
So here's an example of a Fortune 100 company, and this is their news releases. So as you say, all you get is really just a list of news releases. There's nothing here. It says you can contact media relations, so you can go there, but there isn't anything much else than that. Let me just go back here. Now they do have a section on areas of specialty, and it's a lot, but you can't click on any of these, so you can't get any more data. There's no expert listed. There's no expert database that you can search. Let's say you were writing an article about chronic pain. You come here and you think, wow, these people obviously know all about it, and they've got all kinds of research going on about it. I'd love to talk to them, but who the heck do I speak to? They must have experts. I mean, it's just obvious that they must, but they're not listing them. So that's the shrinking newsroom trend. Let's move on to the search visibility. So here is the graph from the Edelman Trust Barometer, 2015 Trust Barometer. So search engines are now used first and most for information about business. So you'll see on the left-hand side, first source for general info, first source for breaking news, and most used to confirm or validate news that they had heard or seen elsewhere. So this really does kind of tell you, as I said earlier, if you had any hesitation about search and the importance of search, it should go away at this point. It is a vital, vital part of the skills you need. And then this was the second graph from that trust barometer, that not only is it the first and most used, but it's now the most trusted. And another interesting little trend I've been watching over the years is the top 15 news sites. Now, for many years, Yahoo's been the number one for news, and it is still, but a year or so ago, Google News wasn't even in the top 10. And they've been really, really working on their news, and it's been going up, 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 up every month. And in March, they're now number 2. Getting very close to Yahoo. I'm interested to see what's going to happen, but that also leads me to see that this correlates into this piece of data, that when you look at the top news sites by traffic, Yahoo News is 1 and Google News is 2. And then come all the brand names that we are used to seeing or think of as a news site. So, Wendy, what's your take on how this affects PR?
You can't be in PR today unless you're conscious of search. And search today offers not only an opportunity for the journalists to find you, it also offers an opportunity for prospects to find you as well. And we find, particularly in getting prospects to find you, that it's very important when you do a press release to not only optimize it for the search engines, but to have a call to action in the release that will drive people to your website.
Right.
And have white paper, have something of value that people can download. It's also great if you can also get the journalists there to start digging in and seeing all the information that Sally was talking about, that you now have an opportunity with a service like Pressfeed to have on your website in a newsroom.
Rebecca, anything you want to add in terms of what a newsroom should do?
Yeah, absolutely. And I also want to just go back a minute to the search part of it, because I think that, the truth is that Google is actually not giving, and we've done a lot of this analysis with using our analyst product, but Google gives very little weight now to wire services. And so the trick is to really, when someone is Googling you or Googling a subject matter that you are an expertise in, it's really best to have as many touch points as you can. So for example, if someone Googles Pressfeed in terms of a newsroom solution, they should be able to find you in a variety of places. So whether you're reposting blog posts on Medium or you're tweeting or whatever, it's really best to look at this in terms of the network effects for organic. So it's not just about shooting out a news release over the wire. It's really all of it, from your owned media to your earned media to contributed content. So just wanted to make a note about that, because it's really, that's where the validation and the trust comes in, is when people see you really everywhere.
Right.
And in a variety of places. So in terms of how this is connected to the newsroom, I think kind of to reverse engineer it a bit, the newsrooms then need to be a source and a hub for all of that incoming content. So people can see, oh, Wendy has as Marks Communications, she has a column on Fast Company, and then she writes for Meritus Media, and then, this, that, and the other thing. So I think it's the press release listing. I think this is something that we see a lot, is just the listings of press release, which is basically you've just commoditized your own news, and it doesn't really have any weight in terms of validation for journalists. they really want to see how far and wide you're going and how much reach you have, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. The other thing I wanted to just emphasize is that the newsroom itself as a whole should be optimized, and it should show up when you search for the company or the brand. But every piece of content on its own individually also has to be optimized. And you shouldn't be optimizing only for the brand name or the company name. You should also be optimizing for the relevant keywords and phrases that are in your blog posts, your tweets, your press releases, your white papers, whatever. So that individually, that's how you will show up eventually everywhere. I had somebody that called the other day, and I always ask when people call to ask for a demo how they found us. And this one lady said, well, I called you because every single place that I looked, I saw you. So that's how it works. Now, if you look at Chevron, just to give you an example, you do a search in Google for Chevron. Their site comes up, which is great. Their newsroom doesn't show up at all. You see these little things under here where they get extra things. Investor relations shows up, about shows up, but no newsroom. So if a journalist was searching, they would have to go and dig into the site to find it. You shouldn't make them work that hard. They do have press releases listed right here on page 1, but look how old they are. Why are we getting news from the 90s that is showing up on page 1? It's not like they don't have any press releases. Look at their newsroom. They have plenty. They have one from the 10th of March. Why is that not showing up? This is just like backwards to me. I don't get it. So let's look at how these newsrooms scored in terms of who is optimizing their content. Fortune 100 wins, of course, but it's a very low number. It's like 32%. So only 32 of the top 100 companies are actually making any effort to optimize their newsroom content. 25% of the Fortune 500 and about 16 or 17% in the Inc. 500. So while I was doing this and writing up the report, it suddenly struck me that next year is going to be 10 years that SEO has been suggested as something that's important to PR. The very first time that this was talked about was in the summer of 2006. So it's 9 years ago, and we still have not even 50%. Hardly a third of the Fortune 100 are even doing it after almost 10 years. Something is radically wrong here. What do you think, ladies?
Yeah, to be honest, I'm very surprised with the Fortune 100. I can certainly see with the Inc. 500, but surprised with the Fortune 100 that the numbers are so low in terms of optimizing their content.
We did a count on the major wire services, and we actually even included PR Web. And if you take PR Web out, the number drops dramatically, I have to tell you. But if you look at MarketWire, BusinessWire, and PR Newswire, and we took the last 1,000 releases that were put on the wire, that number drops down to about 26% of those have been optimized for search. It's a very low number. So somewhere I just feel that the PR industry is not duplicating how important this is.
It's also surprising because those services will optimize your release for you.
Yes.
Yeah.
So they say.
Yeah. So they say, but yeah.
Yeah.
I just wanted to jump in and comment. I think that overall, this really signals the major issue with the industry, which is that it so lacks innovation. And so I think that at a very fundamental level, and we're just now starting to see these things emerge, and it's going to take a while, but it really starts at the education level. And I think it's going to be, honestly, another 5 to 7 years before people really get it because of the new talent that's coming through, and it just takes a while,
Right.
you know, for really to stick and to catch on. So I think that when you look historically at the Fortune 100s, these are old companies.
They are.
They've been around for, they have an old guard.
Yeah.
And they can get away with this because, you know, frankly, a lot of times their revenue is not dependent upon PR like it is a lot of times with the smaller, newer companies. So I think that this is kind of endemic to the industry itself, and that's a lot of it, frankly, is just the lack of innovation, and that we're always chasing technology.
So if I feel apathetic after 9 years, are you telling me I have another 9 to go?
Sorry to break it to you.
Oh my goodness. Well, maybe my book will become a bestseller when I'm old and gray, Rebecca.
Yeah.
All right, so let's move along. The next trend was the demand for visual content. Now we know that there's been a big increase in, you know, we are visual people. We tend to see things visually. And the net for the last 20 years pretty much has been text-based because there wasn't enough bandwidth. I'm sure you remember what it was like trying to download an image, let alone a video, on a dial-up connection. Was just painful. So it's never worked. But now that we have the bandwidth, of course people want to see the visuals. So you've seen Facebook redo their feed. Twitter has made it possible to add images and video directly. Facebook, you can put video in directly now. There's more video being seen on Facebook than YouTube in the last several months. I did a Q&A with Gary Vaynerchuk yesterday, and when we asked him for his top 5 trends for 2015, look, one was video, and he said you absolutely have to concentrate on these visuals. So the use of visuals is really a key part to marketing. What have you seen, Wendy?
I've seen particularly the types of companies, the small to mid-sized companies that we tend to work with. There's a gaping lack of the use of visuals. They might have one little intro from a CEO on the website, but that's about it. It's not, the visuals are not organized, they're not part of a newsroom, and they're not downloadable and made accessible to the media.
Right.
And I think back to your point, Sally, about the shrinking newsroom, if PR people today can provide the type of content that both prospects, customers, and also the media can instantly use, you're creating a real benefit.
Rebecca, any comment?
Yeah, I think it just goes back to kind of what I feel like I'm repeating myself, but I think it's like there's this weird disconnect between PR people and the user. So I think that it's like, what do you like to look at when you go to a website? Like who wants to look at text?
Right.
And so I think it's weird thinking. There's like this disconnect in thinking. And so I think that if you prioritize it and you budget for it and you start to shift the thinking around, okay, how are people really interacting on the web? How are people interacting socially? And so until it becomes a priority and something that PR folks are willing to fight for, it's not going to change. And I think that, you know, I think, again, the startups and smaller, you know, newer companies do a pretty good job of this because they understand the importance of video and visuals like infographics and things like this. But I think, you know, the older, more established companies are still thinking so textually that a lot of it's just making a commitment to the change and into fighting for the budgets.
Right. So we see a big gap between the demand from consumers and the media. It's coming from the consumers, but that's why the media wants it. You have to understand that. The media knows that consumers are attracted to visuals. They can see from their analytics that you get more time on site, more engagement, more eyeballs when there's visual content. That is their bread and butter because that allows them to get revenue from their advertisers. So that's why they really want this. And every editor almost and it's almost 100% that I've spoken to in the last 6 months, have all said we will not publish a piece unless it has great visuals. Now we know that they don't all have the opportunity to produce that because of the shrinking newsroom. So there's a huge demand, there's no supply, and we're sitting in the middle, and we could just be the solution to this problem. So this is what you should have. You should have an image gallery with high and low res images. Some of, there are actually still print people out there that want high res images, so you should give it to them. Both the media, the public, and the search engines all want original images. No one is excited by a stock photo. So when I see PR people going kind of down a checklist, yes, I wrote my press release and I did this and I did that. Oh yeah, I have to have an image now. Where can I go? Oh, okay, I'll go to stock photo, and that one looks okay. It's got some smiling faces, and I'll just slap it on the back and I can tick it off and say, but I do multimedia press releases, and they don't really get me anything. Well, no, because that picture's been seen 10,000 times before. So I get it. It's a pain in the butt. It takes skill. It takes time. You need resources. You need people with talent. But there are things out there like Fiverr and Odesk and Elance, and it can be done. It absolutely can be done. You also have to have videos. There's a big increase in the use of these explainer animated videos. They're doing really well. And the one thing that almost nobody is doing is giving embed codes. With Make Your Images, where you can download them, as Wendy said, it's got to be easy for the journalists. They should be able to come to your newsroom, look at a little news capsule about something that you like. This is the new press kit, but you have to have everything there, like spoon feed them. Nobody wants to get a video in the old-fashioned way. They don't want it by satellite. They don't want somebody bringing a tape. You have embed codes. It's a piece of cake. You go copy, paste, boom, shove it in your site, and your video plays. It's magic. It's like little fairies come and bring the video to your blog. But if you don't give it to them, they won't use it. What do you have to say about that, Wendy? What do you think?
Oh, I fully agree. And what just as astounding is forget companies that are in not so much visual areas, but companies that their whole business is predicated on things that they're doing that are visually important. They have no real visuals of what they're doing. It's just astounding.
I know. It's just.
I was looking at a company now. They're in the digital signage space. You would think on their website you would see images that would be interactive of the digital signage. No, they don't have it. They do have some on YouTube, but you have to go in the search engines to discover they're even there. So companies, for the most part, are extremely remiss in this area. And again, it's a wonderful opportunity for PR people.
Now, this is where we see a huge gap between the Fortune 100 and the others. Fortune 100, 70%, I think it's like 69%, just under, do have an image gallery. And then we get into Fortune 500, you just hear this elevator screaming down. It's 22%, and then in the Inc. 500, almost nothing. Rebecca, any comment?
Yeah, I think again, I'm just like looking at a couple newsrooms, and I mean, I think it's that whole thing of, I think there's a lack of understanding as to why this stuff's important. We have videos and images and all those things on our site as a technology company because I had that PR background, but I think, as Wendy said before, I think a lot of times it's just this discrepancy. You know, you may have an agency working for you when you're a fast-growing company, but someone internally to the organization that really understands the importance of that, and people just aren't thinking about, they're not thinking about who they're serving. They're thinking about themselves as a company, and they're not thinking about the user
Right.
or the media as a user as they would a customer. So it's just, I think a lot of it's just a lack of education and understanding
Right.
there.
So video, it's a big drop. We're down to under 30% in the Fortune 100, about 18% in the Fortune 500, and not even 5% in the Inc. 500. No videos on the Inc. 500. And embed codes, funnily enough, those Inc. 500 that do have videos, most of them do give embed codes. So like the percentage of those with videos and embed codes is very high compared to the others. If you look how many of the Fortune 100 have videos, less than 9% actually have embed codes. So the Fortune 100 and the Fortune 500 haven't figured out that they have to do this embed code thing. So let's look a bit into the future. We touched on this a little bit earlier when you were saying, Rebecca, about a company needs to move beyond the idea of a newsroom with a bunch of listed press releases, that we need a content hub. So we need access to all the content in one place. Your news, your blog, your visual, your social, everything. Why is that important? Rebecca?
Yes, sorry, you cut out for just a second.
Okay.
Technical difficulty. I heard important.
Why is it important for a newsroom to have to offer access to all the content that a company has? News, visual, social, resources, research. Why is that important rather than just having a list of press releases?
Because I think it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, which is you have to make this a fluid process for the journalists. They're strapped for time. They're strapped for resources. I think that most journalists want to be helpful. They want to tell good stories. They want to support companies in building strong narratives. But if you're not connecting the dots for them and you aren't getting them at least, I would say, honestly, 70%, it used to be maybe 10. If you're not getting them 70% of the way there, the probability of them covering you or telling the story that you want drops exponentially. So I think it's just to round it out, it really is about ease of access and serving the journalist in the best way that you can.
All right, so this was from an article in Ad Age, which was talking about the Adidas digital newsroom strategy. And you will be able to get this deck and download it from SlideShare. I'll put it up and send out the link, but I'm not going to read it all. But the point that they're making is that you have to really get to your audience first and own the story. So they were saying that when news media covers a story, they do put their own slant on it. We know that. And there's no difference from a brand covering news. For Adidas, for instance, they cover a lot of sport. So if they cover the guy who's playing at Wimbledon and is sponsored by them, they're still covering news, but they're doing it from an Adidas point of view. And there's no reason why brands can't do that, but often it's just because we don't have the resources in-house either. But if you really, as you were saying, if you want that story, you have to take them most of the way. So this is an example of Marks and Spencer in England. They've started a whole section of their newsroom called Style and Living. It's like a fashion magazine. But of course, everything that's in there is connected to their own products. Wendy, any comment on this kind of approach?
I think that something like this, it's back to what we were talking about before, that the more useful information that you can pull together, the better for both your prospects, customers, and also the media. And in a case like this, there's no reason, for example, somebody, an editor, for example, may come to this page and decide to pull something that you wrote and have it in their publication.
Right.
Obviously, they would let you know ahead of time. But the more good content you can create, the better it is for getting visible and for getting more media coverage, as well as helping your prospects and customers.
And sometimes it's just a question of being very creative in how you do this. It just made me think of the lingerie company, Her Room. They started a content series called What Is She Underwearing? And they cover the fashion, every time there's like the fashion week and the new fashion trends. And then they do a shoot where if you roll over, you can see the underwear that they've chosen for that particular outfit and why. That's so clever. And that thing has been picked up on hundreds of fashion blogs. So here you can also see more of what Adidas is doing. They've got latest news, they've got images and videos, they've got lookbooks, they've got all kinds of stuff available. And then in the one underneath that, they've got the different sports. So here you can see when you go into some of the drill downs. Now, it's fine to say, well, these are huge companies and they've pretty much started their own agency and I'm just a small company, so how would I do this? Well, if you have a hosted newsroom like PressFeed, and there are many others on the market, a small company can do it, excuse me, because you have, in a system like this, you have everything available, and all you have to do is just go in the back end. It's like working in a blog, and put the content in, and it makes it easily available. So you can see they have a section on experts, and then when you click on that, you actually get that person's bio, and you can put a video of them talking about their area of expertise. A lot of journalists want to see that because they all are using video. It's not just in little buckets anymore. Only TV uses video and magazines only use print, because they all have a website today, so everybody's using everything. And then the other future trend that we've been looking at is that newsrooms have to be connected to data, and you have to learn to use data and analytics. This, like search, is another thing that most PR people never get taught. It's not considered a PR skill, but as we go forward, it is becoming more and more of a PR skill. And again, I think I went to the first Web Analytics conference in 2005, so we are 10 years into the idea of doing this. But it hasn't really caught on much. There are a lot of things that you could do very simply. You don't necessarily have to learn to be the world's biggest analytics guru, but there's certain things that you really, really need to do, and you should be looking at the data in your newsroom and using that data to inform you in terms of what you're going to do. Now, Rebecca, I know this is your area. Do you want to give us your ideas and inputs on what PR people should be doing in terms of data for their newsroom?
Yeah, I think the first step is to ensure that you're tracking it using Google Analytics or some sort of plugin for that, and understanding what people are clicking on. So, if you understand what stories or news releases or, even images are of interest to people, you can then optimize that going forward, and maybe you decide, certain headlines, or, if it's an investor related report versus some sort of interesting customer story, you're going to be able to see what's resonating with people. So I think analytics and data is absolutely integral and important to really understanding how you'll strategize for the future, and can even give you insights into what news you push out. So I think it kind of goes just back to what we were talking about before, understanding, having a better understanding of what people are reading and what they're interested in.
Right.
And the media is a good proxy for that.
And Google, by the way, does have a specific PR dashboard that has been created. So if you just do a search for Google Analytics PR dashboard, you'll find it. It's free. You can download it. You can learn to use it. It's not hard. It kind of gives you a couple of things to do rather than trying to do everything. You don't have to become Google Analytics certified, but you have to start. Wendy, what do you think?
Definitely. One thing I would add is that you also want to understand who is coming to your website,
Right.
where these people are coming from, because you might get 100,000 visitors or 20,000 visitors, but if these are not the people you want to come to your site, there's no reason to be doing what you're doing. You need to make some changes. So you really need to drill down and analyze the analytics. Or you may have a large number of people coming to your site, but they're not taking any action.
Right.
So it's very important to really understand the analytics.
And with the Google Analytics, there are things you can do. You can find out where people are coming from, who's referring traffic to you, what kind of social content where's your content being shared. And then if you go beyond Google Analytics, if you really decide that you want to get into analytics in a big way, there's a lot more that you can do with it. There are many other software tools on the market. So one of them is APR Analyst. Rebecca, do you want to give us a quick rundown on what it does?
Yes, and sorry, I should have given you an updated screenshot. That's the V1. But yeah, essentially the thing that we do is a little different, and we do cater to the Fortune 500 and fast-growing tech companies. So I'm not sure what the audience is, but Google Analytics will get you, I think, 30 to 40% of where you need to be. And the difference with ours is that we can actually track your PR activity all the way down to revenue. We've solved that issue. We integrate with Google Analytics. They're actually a partner of ours, and Salesforce. So really giving you insights into revenue, which is a big piece of it, giving you competitive intelligence, what your competitors are doing, and then insights into which publications are really driving activity and moving the needle for your business. So that's kind of the short end of it. And happy to you can feel free to reach out and I can give you a demo. But
sure.
Yeah.
And there are others. This is a fairly inexpensive one that just tracks where you had pickup. It's called PR Track It. And it will also give you some ideas of reach. So from very little investment, there are tools that you can use. So I would really suggest, if you're not doing any analytics on your newsroom, you should. If your newsroom is part of your overall website, it's probable that your webmaster has analytics on the whole site and could give you the stats for your newsroom, but you need to just start figuring out what those stats are, what do you want to see, what are the most important things, and then learn to use them and be able to extract the insights that will inform and drive your strategy going forward. So those are the two things we would really recommend that you do for the future. So we're out of time, unfortunately. I'm going to check and see if there are any questions that have been put in the meantime. Just give me 1 second.
Sally, can I give a really good resource for, because I think it is about finding affordable resources to really round out things like visuals and infographics and content. And so we put together this site called prtech.co.co. And if you go to the ecosystem page, there's a ton of resources in there that I think would be useful and can plug into things like press feed or like for outbound content that will kind of get you up to speed and some of the, kind of the more modern approaches to PR and newsrooms. So and happy to circulate that to Sally afterwards.
Yeah, that would be great. So I have one, it's not really a question but more of a comment. I'm shocked to hear that this is PR 101. I think people have gotten too into social media, blogs, Instagram, etc. But putting it all together bypasses them. It's time to go back to the fundamentals. Okay. Do you have an example of a company newsroom that's doing a good job of presenting story ideas? I can find one and I will post it and then email you. How about that? I'm not sure I understand how to optimize the entire newsroom. Okay, this is a little technical, Jim. It has to do with what you put in your meta tags for the home page of your newsroom and how the content is created. It's the same as you would optimize an entire website, but you're optimizing the news section. So I can find some articles. Email me to remind me, please, but I will find some articles about that. I think those are our, wait a minute, there's one. Do you think that companies should separate press releases and blog posts or merge them? What do you think, Wendy? What's your answer to that?
I think that companies should separate them. The blog posts actually should not be glorified press releases. They should be something that's informative. You're not just touting your company. And I think it's confusing to mix a blog post with a press release, and would recommend that you have a separate section for news releases and a separate section for your blog posts.
Journalists really like it when you have all your content in separate categories. Even amongst your press releases, if you have a lot of different types of press releases, like you have financial ones and corporate ones and product ones. If you look at Canon, they write press releases about lenses and cameras and a whole bunch of different stuff, and they're all listed under that, each category separately. So that when a journalist who's writing a specific story comes to your newsroom, they don't feel like they have their mouth to the fire hose and they have to go and dig through everything to find the one thing that they might be looking for. If they're writing a thing about digital SLRs, well, that's all they want to read about. They don't want to read about all the other 10,000 things you might be writing about. And I totally agree with Wendy. Your blog is a completely separate entity. I think you should pull the feed of your blog into your newsroom and display your blog posts there, but not interspersed with your press releases. And I don't think you should use your blog as a quasi-newsroom and just throw press releases into the blog every now and again, because that makes it very hard.
Well, and the rationale behind that, I don't know how many people are still on, but the blog, you shouldn't be talking about yourself in the blog. Like once in a while, maybe 1 out of every 10 is company news, but it really should be a place to talk about trends and educating and interesting stories around the industry and maybe how you serve your customers. But I think there's a real misunderstanding around this, the reason and the idea of a company blog. And people will probably disagree, but I agree it's a separation of church and state, and that's how journalists are looking at it, and that's their expectation.
Right. We have a question from Sue. Can you better define curating news and trends, industry news and trends? Who wants to take that one?
I'll be happy to do that.
Okay.
By curating, it's focusing on a particular topic. Let's say you're focused on the ad tech space, so you would curate articles in ad tech, and by curate you would have links to the specific articles, but it wouldn't just be links. You would have a paragraph or so where you would add some value. So it's an easier way for you to get content because you're not writing from scratch, you're referring to a particular article. The article should be of interest to your audience, and at the same time, you're showing some thought leadership by one, finding the article, and two, adding your point of view as it relates to the article.
A couple good examples of this is Dell's Tech Page 1, TPO, if you just Google Tech Page 1, and then Adobe's CMO.com. Which can also be considered brand channels, but they do a really good job of that. And they're separate entities, but they're owned by the parent company. So that's just a couple good resources.
Excellent. Thanks, Rebecca. Since PR is in the driver's seat of news, how do you see ethics fitting into this mix? Is it a concern? Any answer, ladies?
Sorry, Sally, I'm having some tech. The first part of the question was cut out. Can you repeat that?
Since PR is in the driver's seat of news, how do you see ethics fitting into this mix of content? Is it a concern?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It's tricky, right? Because, I mean, Wendy and I both, and Sally, I know you do too, I write a ton of contributed content for Mashable, for Inc., for PR Week, Entrepreneur, and the truth is that even with journalists, you're writing about companies and people that you like most of the time, at least, or that you're attached to. And I think that the job of PR now is to get the content into the right hands of the people who are going to write about you, understanding that once you do that, you're kind of letting go of it, but you do have more control than you used to. And I don't think that's necessarily an ethical issue, but I think that it's kind of a known fact that content creators, for example, which is what a lot of PR people now are under a little bit different rules than journalists who are being paid and employed by the publications, by the publishers. So it is a fine line, but I think that we're just in the very nascent phases of even defining what those ethics are. You hear about native advertising and content marketing, and there's a lot of discrepancy there as to the ethical boundaries. So I mean, I don't think there's any black and white answers, but I think it's always just about kind of your gut will tell you what feels right and what doesn't. And obviously if you're paying a journalist or something, that's unethical, but I think we're still trying to all figure it out, frankly. Wendy, I mean, you probably have thoughts on that too.
Yeah, I agree that it's a very good question, and certainly a company, if it's creating its own content and its own so-called spin on something that's happening, I don't see that necessarily as an ethical issue because it's clear that it's coming from the particular company that's writing it. They're not pretending necessarily to be, if you can even call a journalist unbiased, as Sally was saying, they have their own point of view despite trying to hide it. So I think as long as it's obvious where this is coming from. I've also seen sites, Deloitte is one of them, that has a point-counterpoint, where they present multiple sides of an issue. And that can be very helpful as well, so that you're really presenting the full picture, or at least a fuller picture than if you only presented one side. So I think, as Rebecca said earlier, it's key to be thinking of your audience as opposed to just your company, and what is going to truly help your audience, help the people coming to your site. And if you focus on that, I think that will help you in terms of, and guide you in terms of the ethics.
Well, ladies, thank you so much for being with us. And I'd like to say thanks to our attendees who stayed with us for an extra 10 minutes to go through the questions. We really do appreciate your attention and your time. So you can download the full report, all 62 pages of it with all the graphs, at press-feed.com 2015-media-trends. And if you want a free evaluation of your current newsroom, just drop me a line at sally@press-feed.com. And that's our webinar for this month. We will let you know what's coming up next month. Thank you, Rebecca, and thank you, Wendy.
Thanks for having us.
Yes, thanks so much.